Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 12, Hidden Legacies. Tsunade rubbed her eyes after just finishing up the last file for this farce she was about to walk into. The past week she had been preparing for this meeting, tirelessly getting any and all available evidence that would prove beyond any doubt that Naruto had not committed any crime against the Leaf Village or the Land of Fire. It hadn't been hard to do so. Not much a 12-year-old genin could actually do to a nation this strong. Still, when it came to the legal system, every bit of leverage helped. Especially against politicians who used words like a scalpel. Lady Tsunade, don't you want to rest for a few moments? We still have a little bit of time before the meeting starts. Shizune asked. She too was carrying 2 armloads of documents. If there was anyone more prepared for this than Tsunade, then it would be her. It was already past sunrise. She wanted to get this done sooner rather than later. The fact of any battle is that the more time you give yourself to prepare, you give your adversary the same benefit. Her shinobi had reported such happenings from the lord involved in pushing this whole debacle. Not that it really mattered. The feudal lord had already been apprised of the whole situation. Normally, he would have dropped the matter and slid it under the rug, as it were. The issue was, well, he wanted to see Naruto before he made any final judgments. That stupid brat. Why is everything so difficult with him? Tsunade cursed under her breath. Search parties, foreign agents, their best censors. All of this and nothing. There was no trace of Naruto anywhere. Like he just fell off the face of the earth. Hopefully when Kakashi returns he'll have more information for us. He said he found something that was too important to risk. Something he could only show you personally. Shinuz added. How long until he returns? He said there were a few more places he needed to check but should be back before the end of the week. Tsunade rubbed her temples. She really needed him here. Right now the village needed every available ninja they could get. This search had drained their already limited time and resources. The door to the antechamber opened, revealing a pair of royal guards. They bowed as they approached. Excuse me, Lady Tsunade? Lord Madoka has arrived and will greet you now. A guard spoke. Thank you. Let's get this over with then. She took her place on the left side on the table from the feudal lord. Shizune stood several steps behind her after placing all their files in front of her. Across from them was the Minister of Justice, Lord Tojo, and the bastard that caused this whole mess, Lord Hikyu, the Minister of the Interior. They sat rigid in their official robes denoting their stations. Tojo looked uncomfortable to be here. The usually stoic man's face looked ill when he found out the truths pertaining to Naruto's background. Not that she could blame him. It was something that was tightly guarded. Rumor even had it that it was Minato that saved him and his entire family during the last Great War. The Land of Earth had tried to kidnap him as leverage for releasing some of their men that had been taken prisoner during the many battles that raged at the time. It seemed Lord Tojo had nothing but respect for the man who saved him and his only son. Something that was probably gnawing at him now since the situation was reversed. Hikyu on the other hand. The man was undoubtedly stubborn. Even when faced with the truth he doubled down and came at them with every excuse in the book to hold his initial complaints. She noticed his right arm. Still splinted since the attack over 3 months ago by the hidden sound/sand invasion. Something that even without aid of medical ninjutsu would have sufficiently healed by now. Sure, he was roughly her age, but even that didn't limit such a superficial injury to such a degree. She understood that the initial complaint was just a retaliation for a battle that got out of control, but even then there were limits to the absurdity of blaming one boy who not only saved the village but saved his life as well. But for men like him, personal outcomes mattered more than reality. His lordship, Ishiki Madoka, ruler of the Land of Fire, has arrived. One of the guards spoke as they opened the double doors for him. Everyone stood from their seats to bow as he approached. From the corner of Tsunade's eye he could see that he wasn't pleased to be here either. She had known him since his father was in power. Not a bad ruler but definitely more hands-off than his predecessors. The only real boon in this was that he favored her sensei and Jiraiya greatly. "Hello everyone, sorry I'm late. I hope I didn't keep you all waiting," Lord Madoka said, waving his fan. Everyone sat once more after he took his place at the table's head. "Not at all, Lord Madoka, we all just arrived moments ago. I'm glad you could make time today to meet with us," Tsunade spoke sweetly. Yes. I was hoping to meet the boy who was at the root of all this fuss, but I don't see him. I was sure I asked for him to attend a week ago." Tsunade's toes curled. "Yes, you did. However, there has been a situation involving him that prevented him from being here." "You mean the fact he escaped custody?" Hikyu spat. "Escaped custody?" Madeko questioned. Tsunade glared at the pompous man for throwing out such a biased claim. She wouldn't let him twist facts when what Minister Hikyu means, Lord Madeko, is that Genin Uzumaki has gone missing. The moment he arrived at Hozuki Castle in the Land of Mushrooms he vanished without warning. And you haven't had any word of his whereabouts, I'm assuming. Tsunade nodded to Lord Madoka's assessment. This was the one caveat that could break any chance at resolving this issue immediately. We have mobilized all available assets to find him, but there haven't been any sightings. I see. Lord Madoka sighed. This really puts me in a tough position. Tsunade frowned. Glancing over at Minister Hikyu, who was barely hiding his smile. I don't understand. You know the circumstances of the case and the sheer impossibility of it. How is this anything other than a closed and shut case? I have all this documentation to prove it. Apologies, Lady Hokage, Lord Tojo started. It's not the charges placed on the boy in error that's the problem. The issue lies in the fact our counterparts in the Land of Mushrooms government have been up in arms about the fact Uzumaki has escaped their seemingly inescapable prison. It's put tensions between us. Something that is not ideal at the moment, as you are aware. While I have no plans to push further charges on the boy, a lot of evidence suggests that he may have purposely and knowingly escaped official custody. The fact being that not only Uzumaki but his supposed cellmate, Mori of Cedar, had also escaped as well. It seems to me the boy had dealings under everyone's noses. Hikyu added smugly. You have no proof that's the case. Tsunade growled. You expect anyone to believe a 12-year-old boy and some no-name thief from a third-rate shinobi village just escaped from Hozuki Castle? You would have to be an idiot to believe that. She knew how rude her comments were, but even this had limits. To escape a place like Hozuki, you would need both help on the inside and out. Even she would have difficulties doing so. Oh, then how do you explain his disappearance? Hikyu sneered. How he disappeared isn't what's concerning. It's who may have taken him that's the problem. Tsuan turned to the feudal lord, meeting his usual lethargic gaze. I don't need to explain what the boy has inside of him and the lengths some groups would go to capturing him. Some of which would have seized this opportunity thanks to certain people, especially how open they have been in this sensitive issue. How dare you? Hikyu yelled, banging his fist on the oak table. His face turning red with anger. You're accusing me of working with foreign enemies to hand over one of our nation's weapons. Don't be ridiculous. Cracking her knuckles at such a thoughtless comment, Tsunade was ready to bash the man's face in for referring to Naruto in such a way. To this pompous idiot he only saw Naruto as a commodity, even after pushing for his arrest on inane charges. Please, Lady Tsunade, he only said it to make you mad, Shizune whispered. Her tone was very anxious as her placating her teacher's rage was the only thing keeping the guards from hauling them out. Ahem. The feudal lord cleared his throat, regaining everyone's attention. There is no need for such actions, Tsunade. While I agree that fleeing custody is a serious issue, there is indeed no evidence that he did so willingly. As the boy holds a special importance for the Hidden Leaf Village and the Land of Fire, I have come to a decision on this matter. Everyone straightened. This had been the decision on her mind for almost a month. Right now everything was hinging on the fact that Naruto's continuance as a leaf shinobi was up to right now. I move that all charges be dropped. A weight lifted from Tsunade's chest. This was the good news she had been hoping for. It was just a matter now of finding Naruto and returning him to the village safely so they could put this whole episode behind them. Until I see the boy personally, Madoka added. Additionally, seeing as his importance to the nation is more paramount than previously known, I will allow for the Justice Ministry's additional support in locating him. Additional support? Tsunade mumbled. She glanced over to Hikyu and Tojo, the former grinning like a loon at the decision. Why or how he was happy about this confused her. The only reason he was pushing these escape charges was to save face for his error in pushing bogus ones in the feudal lord's name. If the man wasn't Madoka's cousin, then he probably would have been shamed politically or stripped of his position. Tojo sighed. At the request of the hidden grass who administers the prison and a vote of the different ministers, there has been a movement to allow the bounty office to help spread awareness to dash. Smash. The table shattered to splinters as Tsunade's fist tore through it like paper. She only put enough force into keeping the debris reasonably contained, lest it hit the feudal lord. It still didn't stop the guards from drawing their swords. Only the intense stare Tsuan leveled at them kept them from approaching. Do you understand what that means? Tsunade yelled. You're basically calling him a rogue shinobi. Such a thing could make it nearly impossible for him to become Hokage with it hanging over his head. Relax, Lady Tsunade, Tojo held up his hands defensively. We were very strict in how the bounty office set it up. It will be more like a missing person flyer than an actual bounty. And the hidden grass? You think they'll sit idle in this? When word gets out that someone's escaped their prison, then they'll face doubts from foreign governments who send their criminals there. It would make more sense for them to make Naruto out to be some master criminal to save face. Plus those who are after him and aware of his status will know he's missing. Tsunade was at her wit's end. This was worse than she had feared. This would only make finding him more difficult, especially if those that did take him know they were aggressively searching. Well, I'm sorry, but we have already set up the details with the bounty office, Tojo muttered. What? Tsunade looked to the feudal lord for some sort of confirmation, but the man averted her gaze, his face hidden behind his stylized fan. This whole thing was already decided before I got here, she realized. That must have meant they already knew the boy was missing and hadn't been found. Someone tipped them off. Her thoughts ran with potential suspects. Too many to keep track of at the moment. Seeing no more recourse in this issue, she gave Lord Madoka a small, yet stiff bow. Thank you for your time, Lord Madoka. We'll take our leave now. She didn't wait for the spineless man to dismiss her. She and Shizune marched out of the main chamber, passing the nervous guards. To her credit, she managed to get to wait until she was out of the antechamber before she lost it. How dare they interfere with one of my shinobi like this? She ranted, sputtering curses for God and everyone to hear. Shizune put a hand on her shoulder. Please, Lady Tsunade, let's head back to the village so that we can come up with a new strategy then. I'm sure there is a workaround we can use. Tsunade huffed. She would rather drown her problems with sake, but her student had a point. She wouldn't let this slide. At the moment she wasn't sure how she would do it, but she would. Hell, she could just order any shinobi out on missions to rip up any flyers they came across. Granted, it may not do much in the long run, but it certainly would make her feel better. The two walked out of the doors from the building held for meeting the feudal lord. A small bridge connected over the small moat of water that surrounded it. On the other side she saw 9 individuals standing there. All stern-faced and serious. The type of look she couldn't just brush off. Truthfully, Tsunade had been brushing them off for weeks now. Their persistence in the issue was both endearing and annoying in near equal amounts. Now though, there was no hiding what was going to happen. Better to talk to them now rather than have them explode about it later. Lady Tsunade. We want to know what's happening with Naruto, Shikamaru spoke with no measure of uncertainty. The rest of their little group, sans Sakura of course, stood adamant about this as well. Tsuan let out a massive sigh. This wouldn't be a painless talk. Not when it came to Naruto. Fine, it's best if we do this in my office then. There was no doubt now. Tsuan knew without any doubt at this moment that she was the most cursed Kage in history. Naruto's eyes shot open to the sound of splashing water. Sputtering and curses followed as he tried to get his bearings. The dim light of the sun hit his eyes. Fresh sea breeze filled his nose. So much happening at once, it was almost overwhelming. What? Where am I? Naruto drowsily mumbled. Oh good, you're awake. Noriyuki spoke. Standing above him, holding a flask. Shooting his eyes open in realization of what just happened, Naruto's heart started beating like crazy. Today was the day. He would be on his own. He shot up like a spooked rabbit. What time is it? Relax, Noriyuki spoke calmly, we still have plenty of time. You were only out for an hour. Naruto took a huge sigh of relief. He had thought it had been longer. After last night and the night before he had really put a strain on his body. Even now he still felt sore and tired. Something he wasn't typically accustomed to. Granted, he typically had been able to get a much longer sleep. Spending extra time training late at night over the past 3 weeks had been a point of priority in order to maximize his eventual solitude. Over in the center of the top deck were 2 individuals. Both were kneeling with their hands at their side. One was the Hokage. He was missing his white haori and one of his sandals. He was covered with bruises and looked completely drenched. The other man was one he didn't recognize. He had weird robes on with a distinct-looking hat. He also wore glasses which gave him an academic sort of look. Both men looked half-conscious. Naruto knew that the Hokage had gone through the ringer. Taking a giant Rasengan would do that to anyone. The other man was a mystery. His eyes looked half-lidded like he was under some sort of hypnosis. Something he had seen his sensei use during one of his special challenges. Alright, let's get this over with. Noriyuki clapped his hands. Both of their captives straightened up. Their focus became clear. Like his sensei had just used some spell on them. They had a definite look of confusion and probably were trying to get a grasp of their situation. The Hokage shifted, trying to stand. Even looking half dead, it seemed he still had the energy to move. After such extreme beatings from his sensei and a very overpowered Rasengan, it said a lot to the man's determination and stamina. Let's not do anything too hasty here, Hokage. Kagami placed a hand on the man's shoulder, pushing him back down on his knees. We would rather not have to harm either of you. The Uchiha spoke calmly. Why have you taken us? The Hokage wheezed out. Noriyuki opened his mouth like he was going to say something profound. A moment later he let out a shrug and a sigh. Honestly, I have no clue. Truthfully, I never intended for us to face each other. Had your brother not slowed us down, we would have been gone before you had arrived. Nodding sagely at the brief assessment, Noriyuki beamed a smile while shaking his head slowly. Ha ha ha. We really let this one get away from us, didn't we? This was a group effort, so I can only say this. I am disappointed in everyone here equally. There was jeering from Noriyuki's friends. Obviously being blamed as a group when only their shameless leader dropped the ball didn't fly. Though Naruto guessed it really didn't bother them either way, as it seemed in good humor. Not that it bothered the boisterous man regardless, who continued to laugh like a maniac. What do you intend to do with us then? The best-acled scholar-looking man spoke for the first time. If you are expecting a ransom for us, then I wouldn't hold out hope. My nation would never give in to the demands of criminals. The man spoke confidently in the face of his situation, but Naruto could see him shiver slightly. Once again I reiterate. Never our intention to take you both. After you take your scolding, we'll send you back on your way. Oh? Just what sort of children do you take us for? The Hokage spat. The stupid and ignorant kind. Noriyuki replied candidly. However, it seems it will take someone who has a better grasp of maturity than me to knock sense into the both of you. Noriyuki finished, turning around. Behind him, coming up the railing steps, was the same old man he met on the boat the captives had been held. The supposed king of the land of the moon, Kakeru. My apologies for this unfortunate meeting. I would have rather reached out in a different channel. Kakeru pulled back his hood. His face looked like it was carved from stone. His tone tense and unshaken. In this circumstance, I felt more determined to be direct in such a matter. King Kakeru. The scholar-looking man gasped. The man's eyes widening to the rims of his glasses. What is the meaning of this? Does the land of the moon seriously intend to provoke us this way? I raged, clearly unfazed by this sudden arrival. Not at all. Rather, I should say that it's you two that has done the provoking. He pulled a folder from his robe, tossing it in front of the two. It took a moment for them to realize that they were allowed to reach out to read them. The two took inquisitive looks as they shifted through the different papers. There was a look of insight in the scholar's eyes. His hand covering his mouth as this cold realization seemed to dawn on this issue. This only seemed to compound as he scanned through each sheet, even snatching some from the Ryakuge's hands, so that he was most likely aware of the situation to its fullest extent. Reaching the last page, the man crumpled it in his shaking hands. A vein in his forehead popping just above his eyebrow. That complete. Imbecile. Yes, as you can see, Daimyo-sikun, this issue has become rampant. Much of which stems from your nation. With your brother at the head of this issue. Kakeru explained. It seems to me that your nation isn't completely innocent in this scandal either, King Kakeru. I spoke accusingly. Kakeru, though, took it in stride. Yes. My own minister, Shibatoba, has been going behind my back in this for his own personal gain. I assure that I will deal with him and any others that were involved in this. He has hurt innocent people of my land and I will do everything in my power to make it right. The daimyo stood up to face Kakeru. To Naruto's surprise, the man actually bowed. It wasn't a full one but a slight bend at the waist. It looked awkward and stiff, yet Naruto knew it was sincere. The emotion on the man's face made it clear. Naruto figured it was because the man wasn't in a station where he had to bow more than once in a decade. My lord. You shouldn't have to bow in this situation. I protested. Silence. The daimyo snapped. King Kakeru has every right to be angry in this. Do you have any idea how bad this is? This could set our nation back an entire generation if this gets out. The feudal lord turned back to Kakeru. His head was hanging lower. King Kakeru, I know this is a little presumptuous given the circumstances, however I feel that our nation's diplomatic ties can remain steadfast if we work together to solve this issue. I understand your position all too well, Daimyo-sikun, however this matter also affects other nations as well, some of whom involve close friends of mine. They too have the right to make their voices heard in this problem. Mainly with the eventual fallout. The feudal lord didn't look too pleased with this. He probably hoped to keep this incident as contained as possible. Not that Naruto would agree with that. This was too egregious to just blow off like some happy accident. Innocent people were kidnapped and used as property for a few rich assholes. To just disregard this would be unconscionable. I am prepared to offer anything to make this right, King Kakeru. Even if I have to put my life at stake. The way he said it held little conviction. Clearly it wasn't something he wanted to do, yet it was probably his gambit of showing sincerity to making amends. I have a responsibility to ensure the prosperity and well-being of my people. This may jeopardize decades of honest work that has been done on their part at the expense of a few who also sought personal gain. So if I have to pay that price to keep it, I will. Noriyuki scoffed. Oh, relax. No one wants your life. Besides, death isn't an apology. We would rather you live to suffer through your negligence. Regardless of whatever methods you may employ later to suppress this issue, it will be an uphill battle. Seeing as you missed Kakeru's hidden meaning. The feudal lord looked confused. Staring at his counterpart, sighed heavily at Noriyuki more than candid tone. What he's referring to is the second part of his mission. It wasn't just for documents and proof of these crimes. Kakeru explained. The security alerts around the country. I surmised. Noriyuki smiled. Got it in one. I have some of my people transporting massive amounts of slaves out of the Land of Lightning. With Kakeru and other world leaders, they will eventually be able to return people to their proper homes should they wish to return. And the ones that don't will be granted refugee status in my kingdom should they wish it, Kakeru added. Naruto blinked in surprise. He had forgotten about the many who had already been taken. It was good to hear that this convoluted scheme had actually been thorough enough to ensure that everyone got home safely. Even more so that King Kakura would even help those who weren't from his own nation. I see, you certainly planned this out well with your servant. Sukune spoke. His eyes glanced towards Noriyuki apprehensively. It seems your land's hidden village has produced powerful shinobi. Ha 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 ha. Well, thanks for the praise, but we're not moon citizens or even ninja for that matter, ha 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 ha. This was merely a favor for Kakuru. I owed him a debt and now it's been paid. A debt? I asked. We're prolific gamblers. Noriyuki nodded. The land of the moon has the best tables on the continent. You mean you only got involved because you lost some money in a casino? I blanched. Well, on principle we are also freedom fighters, but yeah, while prolific gamblers, there isn't a single one of you that can claim to be proficient at it. Ha 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 ha. Yes, and with this the debt has been fulfilled. Kakuru said. Naruto frowned. A debt? He thought, feeling a little betrayed by this. He believed Noriyuki had been doing this because innocent people were being exploited. Some higher noble purpose. He should have guessed it was because of some stupid reason like this. Leave it to the man who throws away money to have issues with repaying his debts. Just another one of his sensei's annoying tendencies. As usual. Still, aside from his sensei's usual double motives, this whole situation irked Naruto. He wanted to deck these two into the ground, or, at the very least, toss them off the side of the flying ship. Even now, with all the evidence of the wrongs their country committed, Naruto could feel their insincerity. Like they were just going through the motions even in this absurd situation. It made him so furious. Relax, kid, spoke softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. The boss is more invested in this than you think. The feudal lord's eyes gleamed. He adjusted his glasses. His attention solely focused on Noriyuki. I see then, if it's money then perhaps we can make a deal to sort this out. Oh? Just what sort of deal did you have in mind? Noriyuki asked. While the land of the moon is wealthy, I can assure you a greater profit if you come work for me. You wouldn't have to worry for anything in your entire life. Money, land, resources, anything you require and in great abundance. How generous. Let me guess, you would also want these documents to disappear with the slaves that your country has illegally purchased from other nations. Noriyuki said crudely. The feudal lord swallowed a noticeable knot in his throat. A small bead of sweat gleaming down the side of his face. Yes, I promise though that they will all be freed with opportunities to find real work and prosperous livelihoods in the land of lightning. Noriyuki took off his hat. Not giving any reply. He merely turned around, walking stiffly over to the railing off the deck. Everyone seemed to be watching him intently. Not a word or sound uttered as he seemed to stare off into the horizon. His presence seemed to be at the center of the world. Like his being was an inescapable magnet. The hairs on Naruto's neck stood up. A sudden trembling that sent a blood-curdling chill down his spine. Without even realizing it at first, he saw it. A dark wisp of miasma was creeping up his sensei's leg. It didn't feel nor look like chakra. Naruto had seen vaguely such a thing before. When Hirate nearly killed him. A cold blackness. The winds howled. The sky above was darkening with the surrounding clouds blocking any sunlight. A sudden gale rushed them. Squatting low, Naruto could barely stand up straight as the whole airship shook. Shit. Now he's done it. Toshiko cursed behind Naruto. I've changed my mind. Noriyuki said coldly. He turned around, head tilted slightly, his eyes were wide and unblinking. His whole demeaning feeling unhinged. I want your life instead. The feudal lord shakily staying on his feet almost did a treble take. What? From his sleeve Noriyuki pulled out a knife. He tossed at the feudal lord's feet. The metal banging hard on the wooden deck. Your life. I want it. Right now. The lord's eyes widened. But my deal. I could offer you dash. I don't want any of that. It's worthless to me. I want your life. It shouldn't be a problem, right? You were offering it anyway. The two stood staring at each other. Noriyuki's unrelenting gaze staring down the man who was trembling. The Lord looked like he could barely take a full breath. The situation was so tense that the knife at their feet wouldn't make a single nick. RRRRGG. The Raikage grunted, as he was forcibly held down by Kumodoro. Clearly he wasn't too keen on seeing his ruler commit seppuku. What's wrong, Raikage? Isn't this acceptable? Doesn't this fit your world view? Power and action are the things a shinobi respects. He is your leader. Only a moment ago he offered his life for the sake of his nation and people. All he needs to do is die, and any fallout your nation could face from this issue goes away just like that. Noriyuki's monotone voice was off-putting to say the least, somehow making the content of those words seem trivial in comparison. The Raikage snarled. You may mock me for thinking such things, but this world, we humans, are defined by violence and conflict. The reason why the great nations hoard jutsu. You may call us out on our actions, but other nations are doing the same. Even now, in your hypocrisy, you have taken it upon yourself to get involved in matters that don't concern you. Force your will on us for your own ends. Noriyuki walked past the whimpering feudal lord, crouching low in front of the Raikage. The two were staring at each other, faces mere inches away. Even while bruised and beaten up, the Raikage's eyes were fierce. Noriyuki shook his head as he placed his hat back on. You're a complete dumbass. How someone like you is related to Ayaide completely baffles me. Honestly, I would be doing this world a favor getting rid of you. I know if the situations were reversed you wouldn't hesitate. The Raikage nodded, clearly agreeing with that candid assessment. I do not fear death. Then you're a fool. However, since I am nothing like you, I actually keep my word. Both of you get to keep your sorry hides. Noriyuki called over his shoulder. You can relax, Sekun. No need to wet yourself and make a mess on my ship. The feudal lord's body gave out at those words. The tension that had weighed down on him seemed to be the only thing keeping him up. Naruto knew instantly that the man had passed out before his body hit the floor. I grunted. How soft of you. I'm surprised someone of your strength has lived so long on such a weak mentality. Soft? Ha 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 ha. Let me ask you something, Raikage. An honest question if you'll humor me. Hell, call it a debt for not permanently crippling you. I'm sure life without your legs would have sucked for someone who claimed to be the fastest man alive. Noriyuki chirped. Scowling at such a thought, the Raikage nodded. What is it? Do you go out of your way to step on every insect you see? Naruto saw it. For the first time he saw complete and utter dread from the man who seemed to endure through just about everything. He couldn't see his sensei face from where he stood, but the reactions from Noriyuki's friends said it all. Their eyes averting the gaze of their leader. I don't. You see, what you and your boss don't realize is that I am not a mercenary. I am a villain. Plain and simple. Everything is my business and anything I want is mine for the taking, without question. No qualms or concerns of morality about how I do so. But you, you're worse than I am. Like a bug that only acts on genetic instinct. Every thought, every action so obvious that you may as well be insignificant to those who see the real world. So let me be clear on these thoughts you are having right now, seeing as any means to persuade you from your delusions will be fruitless. I'll put this in simple terms. Noriyuki stood up, walking over to a stone-faced Kakeru and placed a hand on his shoulder. Should you attempt vengeance on my friend's nations, then there will be consequences. If you pull this human traffic garbage again, there will be consequences. If your nation doesn't get its head out of its ass, then well, there will be consequences. You'll kill us, is what you're saying. The Raikage surmised. Noriyuki scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. Have you not been listening? Why would I go out of my way to kill 2 single insects? Better to destroy the entire colony in one go. Saves a lot of time. The Raikage's eyes widened. His teeth gritted to the point Naruto could hear them crack. You would kill innocent people. People from my land who had nothing to do with this. Noriyuki shrugged. I'm a villain. It doesn't matter to me if there are 4 great nations or 5. Life will carry on even if one nation is buried by sand and submerged back into the earth. The Raikage was struggling again. With all his might, trying to break free. It didn't help. He was powerless. Murderous intent still leaked out towards his sensei. Noriyuki merely smiled, rolling his eyes at his captive. All right, I think that's enough. Your idiocy is giving me a headache. I bid you both farewell. Remember my words, Raikage. Take heed to listen to your brother. He knows the way. With a hand sign, a black pattern formed underneath the feudal lord and the Raikage. A moment later the two disappeared in two distinct flashes of white light. Obviously with some sort of transportation jutsu from the seal on the deck. Beams of sunlight pushed out of the dispersing clouds. The wind became significantly calmer. Like the last few minutes had been some warped nightmare. So unreal that it was like fantasy. Clap. Naruto jolted as Noriyuki clasped his hands together. His normal shit-eating grin plastered on his face. All right. Now that the doofus brothers are gone, let's party. Tsunade took a deep sip of her tea. It soothed her throat. A necessity, as she was anticipating having to yell during this terse conversation. Although a small part of her realized it was just stalling. A means to put off talking about this issue with people who she had no real right to yell at in the first place. Her eyes scanned the group of young people standing before her desk. Eyes full of determination and vigor. Something she hadn't seen in years since her encounter with Naruto. Now she was their leader. A swell of pride in that fact, as she knew they would become the best of their generation. That also meant they were headstrong and stubborn. Best to just throw it out there, she thought. She cleared her throat, getting everyone's already undivided attention. As of 22 days ago, Genin Naruto Uzumaki has been declared missing. A pause. Her words clearly impact the 9 shinobi with varying effect. Shock. Confusion. Anger. Fear. Concern. It wasn't that surprising given the news. What the hell do you mean he's missing? Kiba yelled. Clearly his brash attitude gave him more initiative to respond. Shortly after your return from the Sasuke retrieval mission, Naruto was sent on a mission. However, only a day into his assignment did we receive a report from the client that he never showed up at the scheduled time. Tsunade kept her voice stern. She was lying through her teeth, but given a lot of the nuances to the situation it was best to stretch the truth. Shikamaru took a step forward. If I may ask, Lady Tsunade, what did the mission pertain to? Who went with him on the mission? What was the mission's designated rank? Tsunade internally groaned. Leave it to someone like Shikamaru to want every little detail. It should be a given since he was a chunin at such a young age. She really didn't put much effort into this story than she had liked. Her only fear was being seen through. It was a B-rank mission to assist a noble in the land of mushrooms. His teammates were Kotetsu and Izumo. During the mission they separated from him due to an encounter with unknown enemy shinobi. We don't have any clues on who they were. Just that Naruto vanished soon afterwards. She hastily explained, making a mental note to talk to Izumo and Kotetsu right afterwards about cementing this deception. I see, thank you for informing us. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. Then you also wouldn't mind giving us an update on Sasuke and Sakura as well. We heard Sakura was attacked, Lady Tsunade. She hasn't come out of her house since she went to the hospital a week ago. No one has said anything about how it happened. Ino interjected. The worry in her voice was evident. Tsunade couldn't blame her for that. It only made this part next even worse. Sasuke Uchiha had been unconscious for 2 weeks following his recovery under Umbu guard. At the time I saw little reason to allow her request, but she was persistent. She was given permission to see Sasuke. However, during her visit, Sasuke revealed his incapacitation to be a ruse and used her as a hostage to make an escape. As the words left her mouth, the whole room shuddered. There's no way Sasuke would do such a thing. Ino exclaimed. Tsunade's brows furrowed. He used Orochimaru's curse mark to kill his Umbu guard and in the process maimed Sakura. While her wounds are non-critical, her mental state has deteriorated following the event. Tears were pouring from the young Yamanaka's eyes at these revelations. Seeking comfort from Hinata, who looked close to the same point after hearing of Naruto's disappearance. I am assuming under these circumstances that Sasuke managed to escape. Shino asked. Yes, his curse mark gave him the capacity to fly above the clouds and out of our search range. Under the circumstances it may have also affected his mental state, but there is no conclusive proof that this is the case given his past actions. While Tsunade doubted that to be the case, it served as a means to placate them. Even when it seemed clear that he probably had help from Orochimaru for his second escape. This is bullshit. Kiba raged. After all that effort to get him back. He just escapes from the village in the middle of the day. Calm yourself, Kiba. Right now isn't the time to get angry. Neji admonished. Kiba snarled. How the hell can you say that? Naruto, Shikamaru, Koji, you, Akamaru and myself nearly died getting him back. Now even Naruto's gone. I'd say right now is the perfect time to get angry. Erf. Akamaru yipped, seemingly agreeing with his partner. We're all upset about it, Kiba, but we need to focus on fixing things, not blowing up. Tenten spoke in defense of her teammate. You're right, now is the time to come up with a plan. Shikamaru said. The lazy boy turned back towards her, meeting her gaze. I'm assuming all the attempts to track down both of them have been fruitless. Tsunade nodded. Is there any ongoing attempt to find him? We still have Tracker Ninja trying to locate him. The Land of Fire and friendly nations have offered to assist in the search. They will be placing flyers around in hopes of finding him quickly. Tsunade folded her hands tightly together. Her still fuming rage was making her aggravated by this fact. Even though she was downplaying it to them now, the consequences of this won't be lost on them forever. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's go search for him ourselves. If we all pitch in, we can find him in no time. Kiba boasted. Yes. Let us all bind our passions of friendship so that we may return Sasuke and Naruto to the Hidden Leaf Village. Surely then it shall relieve the pain Sakura must be facing. Lee was also enthusiastic to help. Tsunade was happy to see that the boy's unshakable will wouldn't be deterred. However, such brassiness was not helpful at this time. I'm sorry, but I cannot just allow you all to wander around aimlessly. The Leaf Village needs every shinobi it can spare at the moment. However, if we gain any useful information on Naruto or Sasuke, then I will send those of you who are available to assist in returning them. Does this satisfy you all? All 9 more or less gave nods to her proposal. She nearly let out a sigh of relief. Good, then I will keep you apprised of their situations, and I ask you to keep a lookout for any signs of either of them. You are dismissed. They began to exit out. However, Koji grabbed Ino's and Shikamaru's arms, halting them. While he had kept quiet this entire time, it seemed there was something else he needed to say. He even went as far as bowing his head to her. What is it, Koji? Tsunade asked. Lady Tsunade. I have a request to ask of you. It's about Sakura. Cheers. There was a sound of clinking glass shared around the tables that were set up on the top deck. It seemed, since the weather was nice outside, that Noriyuki's friends were having a rooftop picnic as they flew back to Nagaya. Granted, it was nearly 6 in the morning, but Noriyuki once said celebrating isn't about timing, it's about rewarding yourself. Naruto didn't really feel like celebrating though. He was content to lean against the railing and stare off into the horizon. It was a nice view. Being to soar through the skies like this was a novel feeling. One that would quickly come to an end in a few short hours. Hello there, young Naruto. A hand clasped on his shoulder. He turned to see Kakeru standing behind him. I hope you are doing well. Yeah, I guess. He gave Naruto a very nostalgic smile. A grandfatherly smirk he had seen many times from the old man back in the Leaf Village. That's good. I just wanted to thank you for helping my people. I can never thank you enough for what you have done. Naruto almost did a double take when the king of an entire nation actually bowed to him. My kingdom shall always welcome you should you need it. Naruto could only wave his arms around bashfully at the praise. No, I only did what I felt was right. Even if sensei had his own reasons. He muttered that last part quietly. Ha ha ha. Don't feel too harshly at your sensei. He only said those words to protect me. Certainly the Land of Lightning would not take too kindly for a foreign ruler to intervene in their affairs, even with this matter. Truthfully, the debt my kingdom owes to him is unpayable. We probably wouldn't exist without his protection from outside forces. Naruto frowned. Just how did you become friends with someone like Sensei? He doesn't seem the type of guy to listen to any authority figure. Kakeru scratched his chin. Well, you may not believe this given his appearance, but your sensei and I are blood relatives. Naruto blinked thrice. It was hard to see any family resemblance between them except for their height. Is a cousin or something? He is my grandfather. Jaw-dropping, Naruto could only gawk at the man who looked like he could be his sensei father rather than his grandson. Even thinking back to the numerous times his sensei had stated his triple-digit age, there was a detachment to the claim. Like it was some inside joke. Seeing living proof of a grandfatherly grandson really took things into perspective. Ha ha ha. I can see your doubts, but it's true. An old man like myself with a grandchild of my own. It feels like a lifetime since I saw him last. Kakeru said wistfully. Does that mean Sensei is royalty? Naruto exclaimed. Ha ha ha. No. Nothing of the sort. My grandmother was the sole heir of my kingdom. She had apparently encountered my grandfather when he broke into the palace just as one of the ministers of the kingdom had attempted to kill her and take the throne. Let me guess, he was there to steal something, but when he saw that the princess was pretty he saved her and charmed her afterwards. Naruto blanched at that last part. He had heard this tale before. His sensei had regaled him of this tale during one of his special challenges. He seemed to have left out the part where he took off when the princess got pregnant. The flaky bastard. Ha ha ha. Well, that pretty much sums it up. He wasn't around much when my father was a young man, but he was always there to support us when we were in need. He even showed my grandson Hikaru how to use a bow and arrow. It seems he will be quite the marksman like his great-great-grandfather. Kakeru seemed to beam at the memory. Naruto's heart lightened knowing that his sensei truly had a family that he cared for. He really does have a good heart, doesn't he? Naruto muttered. More than anyone I know. It was him who showed me that all the wealth in the world is meaningless without people you love around you. That to let my nation suffer while I revel would mean the loss of everything. More than anyone, it has always been my grandfather who sets the standard for the man I strove to be. I'm glad to hear it, but even I'll admit I can be a bit of a miscreant at times. Ha 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 ha. They both turned to see Noriyuki approach them. He hadn't been around for much of the celebration as he and Hirate seemed to slinker off down into the ship. Just speaking the truth. Kakeru replied. Noriyuki smiled. Well, being truthful certainly isn't one of my virtues. Bit of an anchor when you're a professional bad guy. Speaking of which, are you sure you don't want help in that other matter? Shibata or whatever his name was. Shibata. No, he is mine to deal with. You have done more than enough for me. More than I can ever repay. Kakeru went to embrace Noriyuki, who returned the gesture. The look of contentment on his sensei's face was one Naruto hadn't seen before. You don't owe me anything, Kakeru. You make me so proud. Noriyuki spoke gently. The two broke off after a minute. His sensei patted Kakeru on the back. Anyway, I was hoping I could have a word with Naruto. There are some things I wish to discuss with him. Of course. I have a few others I must thank as well. Well, just don't overfeed them. Just makes them want to drink more. Noriyuki laughed with Kakeru. It was heartwarming to see how close they were. It was their laugh that Naruto could see the familiar relation. Taking his sensei's lead, Naruto was taken down a small hatch into the ship's interior. In many ways it was like the Hokage's office. Rounded hallways except for the spaced circular windows outlining the sides. The interior also seemed to be made of metal that had been painted a tinted silver so that it would refract light into the hallways. Like the ship? Noriyuki asked. Yeah, it's incredible. Naruto said, scanning his eyes around. 5 levels, 15 bedrooms, a kitchen, a dining hall, library, and a training room. All powered by a combination of mechanical genius from Toshiko and special gravity seals from yours truly. Toshiko built this? She really doesn't look the builder type. Remember the story of the master builder and the golem he built to protect his inventions? How the thief tricked him into his own undoing. Of course. What does that have to do with it? Well, he had a really hot daughter. Ha 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 ha. Noriyuki's laugh echoed the halls as Naruto nearly tripped at that tidbit of information. He had thought the novel was some fictional story. He never imagined it was actually based on anything real. Before Naruto could ask anything else, they reached a small ladder leading up to landing above them. Naruto didn't really get a good look on the outside of the ship, but he was sure there was a small alcove that curved out more prominently on one side of the building. Climbing up there was a wooden door. This is my bedroom. The captain's quarters, if you will. Inside was probably the coolest bedroom Naruto had ever seen. Foregoing the bed, which was probably big enough to fit 5 people, there was so much stuff adorned the edges that Naruto could help but be amazed. Weapons, statues, scrolls, paintings. It was a room that really defined his sensei. The things he most likely pilfered over the years. Each with their own amazing story on how they were gained. Naruto glanced over to his sensei, who was placing 5 wooden figures on a shelf next to some expensive-looking gemstones. He recognized them as the toys from the family restaurant. He placed them down like they were great treasures. The boy huffed in annoyance. Some objects in the room aren't so amazing, it seems. 2 windows were on each side of the room that seemed to be tinted with gold. Adjacent to the bed was a small table with 2 chairs next to it. Barely with enough room to fit them with all the stuff crammed into this exhibit. Come sit. Noriyuki offered to sit on the other chair as he sat down. Pretty cool room, right? Must have taken you a long time to collect everything. A lifetime. Naruto pursed his lips. Must have been easier being able to live so long. It was a bit of a shock to hear that your old man Kakeru's grandfather. When you travel all around the world and find all of its mysteries, the possibilities of prolonging your life become much more abundant. Not something many can do as they stay tucked away in their own little world. Noriyuki scratched his chin. But even then it's hard to believe that I'll be, let's see, 106 years old this year. 106, Naruto wheezed. Guess I should be calling you old man too then, or maybe the shameless sage would be better. The shameless sage. Ha 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 ha. I like that. Of course you would. Naruto griped. He had hoped his jab would irk his sensei. Sadly, his sensei wasn't as vain as pervy sage was. But you're right. It's hard to believe I have great-great-grandchildren, isn't it? Naruto folded his arms and huffed. Given all the stories you told me involving pretty women, you probably have a ton of children. Shrugging, Noriyuki all but confirmed that assessment. Not a ton, but quite a few descendants ranging across the world. Each and every one of them dear to me in their own way. Each leaving their own impact on the world. Some that have even been prominent leaf shinobi. This seemed to snap Naruto's attention. Really? There are people in the Leaf Village that are related to you? He asked incredulously. It was hard to believe there had actually been people in his own village that were family with this enigma of a man. There were, until recently. Noriyuki confirmed. His voice dropped along with his smile. Naruto noticed his sensei fists tighten at the mention of it. My great-grandchild died a few years ago. Naruto's head dropped. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. It was quite sad too. He was a very prominent shinobi in your village. There isn't a shinobi on this continent who didn't know his name. He must have been famous then. Who was he? For some reason Naruto's heart started beating hard. He didn't know why, but there was a twinge of pain. Noriyuki gazed into his eyes. His stare piercing through him, making his heart beat faster. His name was Minato Namikaze. Minato Namikaze. Naruto mouthed. He had heard the name before, yet there seemed to be a gap in his memory. Noriyuki let out a humorless laugh. Ha. I guess titles seem to be worth more than actual names in your village now. He was also referred to as the Yellow Flash, or, as you probably know him as, Tears. Warm yet strong tears ran down Naruto's cheeks. Without warning, an incredible sadness filled Naruto's heart. The 4th Hokage. The boy whimpered. His whole body tightened as he found himself staring down at his feet. Noriyuki ruffled his hair gently. Yeah. Wiping his eyes was all the young boy could do to fight this troubling revelation. All of the times Noriyuki had mentioned the fourth Hokage were so detached. Like they had been mere acquaintances. The fact that his hero was the descendant of his sensei hurt him for some reason. Knowing that he had lost someone who was more strongly connected to the man than he was. Naruto, I think it's time I explain everything to you. It will take a while, but I want to start from the very beginning. Even after these past 3 weeks together, I know you have questions. I hope this will quell any doubts you have been having. Sitting straight, Naruto nodded. Despite hearing this troubling revelation, he wanted to know just who his sensei was. More importantly, he wanted to know why he chose to help that day he was sent to prison. Regardless of what he heard, though, there wasn't a doubt in Naruto's mind it would change how he saw his sensei. From a summoning jutsu, 2 glasses and a single bottle appeared on the table. Noriyuki uncorked the bottle and poured into the glasses. He slid one over to Naruto. Drink it. It'll make you feel better. Definitely make this conversation much easier. Mutely Naruto took the glass and downed the contents in one go. He still didn't have the palate for alcohol yet, so he tried to drink it fast even if he made him feel strange afterwards. He was more than a little surprised by this. It actually tasted sweet like citrus and was cold and bubbly, like soda. It was probably the best he had in the past 3 weeks. Good, right? Yeah, what is it? Naruto said, holding out the glass for a refill. It's my own creation. A special form of yuzu called kirameku. It's made from a rare type of citrus fruit not from this continent. I infused the liquid with very controlled wind chakra to carbonate the alcohol. The label has a seal on it that preserves the bottle so that it can be stored for years at a time, letting the carbonate fused more distinctly with the other compounds. This bottle is nearly 20 years old. You added chakra to alcohol? It was crazy to think that he was consuming his sensei chakra. The greatest culinary masters use chakra when cooking. It's the big secret that sets them apart from everyone else. I had no idea. Naruto said, taking another sip. It's also symbolic of what chakra was meant to be. I guess though I should start at the beginning. Over 1,000 years ago to be exact. Noriyuki took a sip from his glass, staring at it, almost mesmerized by the fizzing of the bubbles. Do you know how chakra started? Naruto shook his head. He barely paid attention in class to learn even the normal materials of being a shinobi, let alone how they were actually created. Well, it all starts with history's greatest fool. Hagoromo Otsutsuki, sometimes called the Sage of Six Paths, was the first to use chakra. Very powerful man too, yet he was a complete imbecile. Noriyuki laughed. You're saying the guy who created chakra was dumb? Naruto quirked an eyebrow at this fact. Ha ha ha. No, not in the way you're thinking. I guess I should say he was naive. Back then he didn't try to teach ninjutsu, no, back then it was called ninshu, the shinobi creed. Ninshu. Yes, he believed that by connecting our spirits to others everyone could understand and help each other. That we could ease each other's pain and help people in need. To connect everyone to create an everlasting peace. That doesn't sound so bad, Naruto thought. How or why this Hagoromo guy was considered an idiot was strange. Sadly, when he awakened people's ability to use this energy, they chose to connect their spiritual energies to their own bodies, combining their physical and spiritual energies to get chakra. Naruto answered. Yes. Instead of learning to understand others, they chose to create fire jutsu instead. Not even for the sake of staying warm either. Noriyuki shook his head. Yeah, but just because other people used it to hurt others doesn't mean his initial purpose was wrong, you know. Naruto argued. Noriyuki smiled. A very sick and sinister one that bore his teeth. His hat tipped down to cover his eyes. Tell me, Naruto. How do you think I have been reading your mind or knew what you were feeling? You were curious multiple times throughout our time together. Naruto paused. A cold realization washed over him. Truly, you are one that wears his emotions on his sleeves. Those had been the words Noriyuki spoke to him after he said he believed he was innocent. He knew the whole time that he hadn't done so. Ninshu. That's how you were, since the moment we met. Ha ha ha. Yes. That was why Hagoromo is considered a fool. When one masters this power and can truly understand others, then you can do just about anything. You can basically become unbeatable. You know their weaknesses, their thoughts, their actions. It's easier when they wear their emotions on their sleeves, like the Raikage's immense rage. People like him become so easy to read that they may as well be picture books for children. Gears were turning in Naruto's mind. Thinking back to all those moments in training where it seemed like his sensei had known what he was thinking or feeling. Especially with gratitude meditation. Noriyuki had told him that he was empathic. He didn't really know what it meant at the time until he read about it in one of the novels Noriyuki gave him. Now he was realizing that even those stories had played a role in helping him understand his training. Everyone can use ninja, but some people have a natural adaptation to it. I assume you know what I'm talking about. Naruto gripped his stomach. The Nine Tails. You told me the Kekkei Genkai allows me to sense negative emotions in other people. That is part of it, but you seem to have a natural aptitude for it as well. Strong personalities tend to have it in stronger doses. Killer Bee was one who could use it to an extent. Others who aren't so gifted have trained it over decades, like the monks I have told you about in the past. The meditation training too. Yes, that helps strengthen your spirit and will help you master ninja. Naruto grit his teeth. If you call Hagoromo a fool, then why do you still call it ninja when you're twisting it for something it wasn't supposed to be? Noriyuki shrugged. Irony. Certainly twists the knife, doesn't it? He replied flatly. Of course. Naruto palmed his face. There was so much he wanted to ask about this, and now he knew that Noriyuki was aware of that fact. It was so strange to him that someone could know every thought and action he would take. A bit disturbing. Really disturbing, actually. Moving on. Noriyuki exclaimed. So during this next millennia, as you can guess, people started creating the ninjutsu you're familiar with. They create clans, they fight and eventually form hidden villages. My tale begins 106 years ago on an island that is now part of the Land of Wind. It was where I was born. So you were born in the Land of Wind. Guess it makes sense because you're a master of wind chakra. Truthfully, Naruto would never have guessed it. His sensei didn't really seem the type who looked distinct enough to belong anywhere. I guess. Back then there were separate kingdoms that had territory within its borders. The island I was born on was called Tsunafuki. It was quite the segregated society with different caste and social structures. Noriyuki explained. I don't understand. Were you like a noble or something? Naruto wasn't really sure what caste meant, but he knew clearly what different social structures meant. This mission had made that very abundant. His sensei folded his fingers together. His thumbs pushing against one another until they turned stark red. Noriyuki's shoulders tensed. No. For the first decade of my life, well, I was a slave. Tick, 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 tick. For the last week Sakura had taken comfort in only hearing the sounds of her clock hanging from her wall. Not even the sounds from the bustling of the streets below seemed to permeate through her bedroom walls. It left her only the sounds of her own thoughts. Grr. A rumbling in her stomach. She hadn't eaten in days. Food left outside her door by her mother went uneaten. She knew that it would be thrown up later, when the nightmares came. The same one. Every night since the boy she loved hurt her. Hurt her to the point it ached. Her hand clasped her forehead as the burning sensation acted up. She pushed herself up off the floor, reaching for an unempty container of balm for soothe the pain. Her hands scooped up the goop which she had been applying habitually. Her image in the shattered mirror was too fractured to see if it was having any effect on her disformity. She could feel it though. Not just from the pain but the grooves of the branching scars that were etched on her forehead from Sasuke's lightning. They felt like they stuck out of her like untreatable acne. Forever marked on her body. For years she had been so self-conscious about it being too big. Something unattractive that she couldn't hide lest it make others think she was trying to hide it. That it bothered her. Now, she would give anything to go back to that comfortable discomfort. A blaring tree-shaped scar blaring on her like a permanent rash. She felt ugly. I am ugly, she cursed once more, taking her whole hand to scrape all of the bomb from the tin, smothering it all over her face regardless of the scar's location. It's what I deserve, she thought. To her everything that had happened was because of how weak she was. Always a burden to those around her. Only in the way. Being a hostage suits you. Ha. I'd say it exemplifies all your talents. Sasuke's words echoed in her head over and over. Because of her, 2 Umbu members, real ninja, had died protecting her. Also she could continue on existing. It only made her heart ache that much more. Those 2 lives were thrown away because she couldn't bear to wait and see Sasuke. Her eyes glanced at the photo on her nightstand. Team 7 all together. A time she truly felt happy about. There was a simplicity to it that she enjoyed. All 4 of them together forming some strange family. Kakashi-sensei with his flaky attitude, Naruto always trying to be at the center of attention, and Sasuke. Gyaaye. Trying to grasp at memories of Sasuke made her head throb. The pain hurt her like she had taken another Chidori to her flesh. She writhed in agony as tears poured from her eyes. Nails digging into her face as blood began to pool from her nails. It didn't matter anymore how she looked. No one would love her anymore. Sakura knew her time as a shinobi was over. Naruto could barely breathe. The words he just heard nearly tore the life out of him. Like everything about it didn't make sense. Of all the things that he would denote his sensei as, there was never a single moment in his very existence that thought he was someone's property. Not considered a human being. His teeth grinded. Tails digging into the wooden table. You were a slave. Oh relax Naruto, Noriyuki said flippantly. He let out a deep chuckle. To be honest I was a really terrible one if it makes you feel better. The boy's fist slammed down on the table. It doesn't. You shouldn't joke about it either. Naruto was pissed that his sensei just seemed to shrug this off. To be in such a position, the thought harrowed him. Well, you're right about it being a terrible existence. But that was the price of my crime after all. Crime. You said the first 10 years of your life, right? Just what crime could an infant commit? With no amount of levity all his sensei said was, I was born. Naruto sank back into his chair trying to understand the meaning behind it to no avail. Your birth? How is that a crime? You see it was against the law at the time for a noble and a slave to have children. They were seen as proof of their crime so those who were born did not have rights as citizens, regardless of what each parent was. My father was a noble and my mother was his slave. Rage burned up in Naruto. Such a law is unforgivable. His thoughts fumed with fury. His thoughts drifted to the kidnapped women and children in the sea container. How Noriyuki was once in their shoes. You were made a slave because your father forced himself on your mother. How is that not wrong? Noriyuki sighed. I never said it wasn't and for a long time I had that same thoughts about it myself. But as I got older I saw the humor in it. Think about it. I was born a criminal in the eyes of the law and now here I am. Master criminal. That's the epitome of rule number 6. Ha 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 ha. While Noriyuki laughed off the horror of it, Naruto's rage calmed slightly. Criminal rule number 6 was, the secret to living a great life is through romance. His thought trailed off as he knew now why his sensei got over such a terrible tragedy. To him romance was king. Poetic and novel. Which Naruto interpreted as a means his sensei feeds his reality-challenged delusions. He could only grumble at the poor taste of the topic. So since I was so terrible at being a slave I spent most of my time locked away in a cage. Not even enough room to stand. Even as a scrawny little thing the damn cage was so cramped. Noriyuki shook his head. Though it was tragic, you can take heart in knowing that the Tsunafuki kingdom crumbled after a very bloody revolution. Not one noble survived. It was during that time I met the man who saved me from that terrible existence. My sensei. He spoke the last part with a heavy hand of nostalgia. Naruto took note that there seemed to be a flicker in his sensei's eyes. A distinct gold color. Who was your sensei, sensei? Naruto asked awkwardly. His name was Bunpyaku. He was a monk from the Land of Wind. He was also the first jinchuriki of the one-tailed beast. Naruto's eyes widened. He was a, that's how you knew so much about jinchuriki. Then how do you have dash? Everything in order, Naruto. It will all make sense. Noriyuki interrupted. He had been there as a healer during the revolution and afterwards took me with him as an apprentice. Bunpyuka was, he was who I considered to be my father. Wise, generous, and kind, to a fault. Did he have difficulties being a jinchuriki? Naruto asked. My sensei was always hard to read. In fact, he was very similar to Hagoromo, I'd imagine. Not only did he believe in understanding others, he believed that everyone would come to accept what was in each other's hearts. No matter if they were human or tailed beast. Did you think he was foolish then? Since they had similar views. Naruto would have liked to meet this man. He must have been pretty amazing to not only be a jinchuriki but the sensei to someone like Noriyuki. Sometimes, but I will always love him. He was very dear to me. During my time with him I learned much of the same things I have taught you. Despite his pacifism, he was powerful. His teachings helped me thrive when the major hidden villages were forming. Enough that I became prominent in what's now the Hidden Sand Village. Naruto nodded. You mentioned almost being a Kage. I guess you meant the Kaze Kage. Ha ha ha. To be perfectly honest, I was named Kaze Kage by the majority of the village's inhabitants. Sadly, the feudal lord in the Land of Wind wanted someone who was blood related to him to take charge. As such, I was ousted only a few days into my reign. Some in my little family here jokingly refer to me as the Rei Daime Kaze Kage. Stupid jerks. Such a thing left a nervous knot in Naruto's stomach. He had always wanted to become Hokage. It's what drove him. Hell, it still drove him now. But over the past weeks, especially this trial debacle he was facing, it left a dull feeling in him. His sensei was powerful and kind to those in need. Someone like the old man, yet, he was brushed aside because the feudal lord made demands that no one could challenge. So then who became the first Kaze Kage then? This time it was Noriyuki who looked murderous. A small growl emanated from his throat. Ramon, he spat. If I have any regrets about my life choices, it would have been not killing him sooner. You killed a Kage? Naruto exclaimed. Of all the things a ninja should not do, that was at the top of the list. Noriyuki nodded mutely. Him and the second Kaze Kage, which was his creepy-looking younger brother, Shaman. His sensei said, carrying venom in his voice for them. Were they that terrible? At face value they were no different than the Raikage today. That was the problem though. The deserts of the Land of Wind have always been harsh. Many didn't know this, but I had built up a friendship with Hashirama during my time as a wind shinobi. I was going to request his power to create extensive forests to help the nation blossom into a better climate to thrive. And Ramon didn't, Naruto guessed. During the first summit that brought all 5 Kage to discuss a means of peace, Hashirama did something extreme. In exchange for signing a peace treaty, he would distribute the tailed beasts he had captured among them while holding onto the 9 tails for the hidden leaf. The first Hokage, he's the reason villages have tailed beasts. The reason I have the. This was difficult to deal with. He had never thought that it had been one of the Hokage to push this existence on him. Sure, the 4th had sealed it inside him, but now it seemed that the 9 tails wasn't some random encounter. Yes. However, Ramon didn't want a tailed beast, as my master already contained the 1 tail. He, in his infinite stupidity, thought my plan for asking assistance from a foreign land to be a sign of weakness, so he demanded land as compensation from each of the Kage instead. There were threats passed around because of it. Broken trust on an otherwise sure agreement. Everyone but him agreed to the terms, but in the end a workaround was made. The Land of Wind was granted territory that was more hospitable for vegetation. Land that was ultimately taken back only 5 years later following the end of the First Shinobi War. I sometimes wonder if I had forcibly taken the seat of Kaze Kage that I may have diverted 3 pointless wars. Bitter. That was how Naruto would have felt as well. So much pain that could have been avoided. It was hard to think about such things. From how Zabuza had described his life as a shinobi, it was clear much could have been different if peace had succeeded rather than war. For nearly 3 decades I fought for nation and village. It cost me the life of my wife and so much of my time with my son. By the time Ramon took charge, many had been against those who supported me. Bunpaka he was placed in a cage because his worth as a human was deemed less than his value as a weapon. Noriyuki took the bottle and downed the rest in a single go. He promptly summoned another 2 bottles, pouring more in his glass. I'm assuming you tried to rescue him. I did, but my master chose to stay. He was the type that believed someone could eventually connect with shukaku and change the cruelty he had towards humans, even when humans treated him like he was the beast itself. Naruto understood that feeling of not being seen as anything but a monster. The emptiness. Yet, it seemed Noriyuki's master had proven different than him. He accepted that burden and pain. Something Naruto was conflicted about. My master said he had no regrets and he chose to do this of his own will. That he was unfettered by any doubts or burdens. It was from him that I coined the term Jiyuna. A means to honor him for not viewing himself as a weapon. As much as I wanted to forcibly take him, I respected him too much to go against his decision. Noriyuki's eyes flicked again, filling with a sense of elation. It was at that moment I had an epiphany. An epiphany. Let me ask you a question, Naruto. Do you understand why the Raikage was okay with buying people? Naruto frowned. Yeah, I guess. It was to help his nation become rich. Noriyuki nodded at that assessment. So do you accept that it was to help his people? I would never condone dash. I'm not saying you are, I'm asking if you accept the fact he did it for his nations. Naruto nodded reluctantly. I do, but I don't agree with the way he did it. Yes. Exactly. What Hagoromo and my sensei never realized is that it didn't matter if we understood one another or accepted them. The truth they never realized that held back their ideals. It is fundamental that we don't always agree with one another. That barrier we can't get past. It took me over 40 years to realize that. Naruto took the lesson into consideration. As much as he wanted to disagree with that assessment, the irony of calling it out would only prove his sensei's point. He understood and accepted the Raikage's goals. He didn't agree with the way he went about it. Such things also applied to other people Naruto was close with. Sasuke's goals had been the same. He had understood after meeting Itachi why he wanted to kill him, and maybe a small part of him expected that he would do it someday. Leaving the village, going off to Orochimaru to give up his body. Naruto would never agree to that. No matter how much his friend hated him from preventing his goal to get more power, he knew that the choice had been easy to make if placed in the same situation again. For that reason I realized I didn't agree with how the shinobi world was at that time, and at the ripe age of 42 I decided to go rogue. Thankfully, I made a deal with Hashirama in order to keep my family safe from the fallout of my actions. Especially when the village was starting to shun us for my connection to my sensei. A deal with the first Hokage. He would offer sanctuary for my son and his wife and daughter. In exchange, I would take 2 of his shinobi under my wing. To teach them in my ways. Make them strong. I'm sure you have met them. Naruto brows furrowed at his conversation with them in the forest. Yeah, Kagami Uchiha and Sasuke Sarutobi. Why them though? Kagami was a talented shinobi who had impressed me in the past. I wasn't a big fan of the Uchiha because of their reliance on their Sharingan, but he was definitely an outlier in that regard. The other, well, I had hoped to take on Hiruzen too. He had gotten a grasp of all 5 chakra natures at such a young age. He was certainly more talented than his peers. You wanted to take Old Man Third as an apprentice. It was hard to imagine the old man as a rogue shinobi when he was pretty much the standard for everyone in the village. I did. However, his father, Sasuke, begged me to take him instead. He wanted his son to lead the village. As a father myself, I felt obliged to accept his request, and well, you know the third Hokage better than I do. A small smile formed on Naruto's lips. Yeah, I do. It's just crazy thinking that they're both here. How no one realized that they are still alive. With the shinobi wars raging, it wasn't hard to fake their deaths. Once they were informed of the deal I made with Hashirama, they accepted. They have been with me for nearly 50 years now. I'm surprised that the Hokage would ask this in exchange for protecting your family. To Naruto this seemed like an extremely strange deal. Ha 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 ha. I was rivals with him and his brother Tobirama before the Leaf Village was established. His younger brother was such a prude. We never got along. Granted, I always did like riling him up by stealing his jutsu. It's how I knew so much about the shadow clone jutsu. Ha 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 ha. Noriyuki banged his hand on the table in his fit of laughter. He wiped a tear from his eye. Naruto ignored this for the other detail. You were as strong as the first and second Hokage back then. What? Oh no, not even close. Nowadays I would trounce them into dust, but back then I didn't have nearly the amount of knowledge and power I did during that period. Luckily for me, Hashirama preferred non-violent means to settle issues, so I usually tricked him into contests of chance and luck. Naruto knew what that meant. Deadpanning at the obvious undertone. You two were gambling buddies? Really? Oh yeah. I got him into gambling so bad his family had to hold an intervention for him. Not that he minded. He loved playing regardless of the fact he always lost. We had so much fun back then. Sometimes he even brought his granddaughter with him. She was barely 4 years old, but she would sit in his lap and play for him. She really loved playing with the stacks of money. I heard she became a legendary gambler too when she got older. Ha 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 ha. If there was ever a moment to cringe, this would be it. The young boy could only gape as the monster in front of him laughed off what was probably the greatest hidden concern of all Leaf Shinobi. There was a secret joke that Granny Tsunade would gamble the village away in a drunken fit. Worse yet, Noriyuki only heard the legend in the name, not even realizing how terrible she was at it. His sensei was the damn cause of it all. Without even doing anything, and he still was indirectly harming the Leaf Village. Barely containing his cursing, Naruto sighed. It was a good deal in my opinion. I trained 2 of his shinobi who chose to stay on with me while the Leaf Village eventually gained a powerful Hokage. Noriyuki said. This perked Naruto up. When do we get to him in this story? Soon. Noriyuki answered. But I'm getting off track. There is something else you wanted to know. How I have the powers of a jinchuriki. Your sensei was the One-Tails jinchuriki, but I know for a fact that it's Gaara who has it sealed inside him. Naruto explained. He tightened his fists at the memory. Though he was still weird, Gaara had really changed recently. Still, that time he nearly lost Sakura had still irked him occasionally. Noriyuki tipped his hat. I'm aware. You see, as I have told you before, tailed beast chakra will kill most who take it into their chakra system. However, it's typically the amount that kills them. Before leaving, I took a small droplet of the One-Tails power and sealed it into myself. For reference, his sensei held out a finger. A small amount of red chakra formed on it. Why take that risk? When a tailed beast chakra is split, they become a lot like shadow clones. They are psychically linked. Even though my sensei wanted to stay locked away, it didn't mean I was going to cut myself off from him. So you did it to watch over him, Naruto breathed in realization, without anyone in the Sand Village realizing it. Incredible. Thanks, I wish I could say it was my idea. Noriyuki muttered. Anyway, I soon realized that the amount I took wasn't significant enough to create that link. For a time I was stumped as to how I would get more without facing down the entirety of a hidden village. After my family left for the Leaf Village, I headed to help my friend in the newly formed Cloud Village, Ayaide. Why didn't you stay with your son and his family? You didn't just dump him there, did you? Naruto's eyes narrowed at such a likely possibility. To his surprise, for the first time Naruto could actually see his sensei look hurt by his jab. My son had his own life to live. We had grown apart due to how busy my duties had been. Having to forcibly relocate them was the last straw for him. All I wanted was for him to be safe and happy. Something that wouldn't happen if I had stayed. I'm sorry. Naruto said, feeling bad for poking at such a scab. It's alright. Though he died a long time ago, I still hold those feelings of love for him in my heart alongside the rest of my family. A cost of living such a long time. Noriyuki poured himself another glass. He held it up to Naruto, who did the same. To those we love. To those we love, Naruto repeated, clinking the glasses together. So what happened at the hidden cloud? You said Ayaide died protecting you. This was following Hashirama distributing the tailed beasts. The fool failed to realize that some villages had no real means to contain them. As I had learned the method to seal them from Bunpyaku, Ayaide requested my help containing them. It was a disaster. Noriyuki cursed. Nothing had prepared me for trying to seal two-tailed beasts at once. It nearly killed me, but I managed it. Sadly and rather unsurprisingly, the two didn't like that fact that they were going to be sealed in giant stone jars. Ayaide gave his life protecting me and his village when the eight tails broke free and rampaged. I don't think he regretted doing it though, sensei. He seemed like a good man and a great Kage. Naruto said, smiling. You're right. But like me, his absence as a Kage affected the way the continent turned out. It was after this loss that I grew fed up. I was so sick of losing things. My home, my sensei, my family, my friends. It was then I had my second epiphany that I knew what I needed to become. Noriyuki's eyes had changed now. No longer were they their deep green. Instead they showed yellow with a distinct black diamond in the center with 4 small dots. Naruto gulped. Second epiphany. Hashirama once said to me that shinobi are those who endure. For many it has become the standard belief that coincides with their shinobi world mentality. Something you have probably heard time and again. Yeah. A lot of my senseis have said it before. The life of a ninja is a difficult one, so we must be able to endure those hardships. Naruto recited. Noriyuki scoffed at Naruto's comment. Yeah, well, I hated it. Hated it more than I hated anything before. I was sick of making sacrifices. Sick of making compromises. I decided at Ayaide's funeral that I would no longer live as I was. I would reach a level that couldn't be challenged. Rise higher than anyone before me. If ordinary shinobi endured hardships, then I would become an extraordinary one who thrived. The hairs on Naruto's body stood up. To not endure but to thrive, Naruto contemplated. He liked the sound of it. That feeling when Noriyuki spoke about reaching a higher level than the Kage emerged. He understood now why his sensei had suggested it to him back in the ruins. That being a Kage would only lead to the same heartaches he had endured his entire life. Something he wanted him to avoid. To live a life without regrets. Naruto now understood that his sensei didn't just decide his path on a whim. It was only after he was long into his life. Much older than he was now. The two sat in silence for a few moments as his sensei rubbed his temples. Clearly digging this all up wasn't easy. Even for him. The only good thing to come out of that encounter was that I finally gained an insight into the tailed beasts. Specifically, how their chakra worked when not properly sealed. Coincidentally, it was from observing the Gold and Silver brothers who had eaten parts of the Nine Tails' flesh. He held out his finger again. Red chakra emanated slowly but was becoming noticeably larger. Just as a tailed beast can give its host chakra, the inverse is also possible. In order to grow the connection between my tiny drop of shukaku's chakra and with its primary source inside my sensei, I started to feed it my own chakra. To my surprise, the amount began to grow as its latent will altered my chakra to its own. Cannibalizing and assimilating it, twisting it to its strong negative emotions. Not only was I eventually able to make a strong connection to my sensei through this link, after a decade of feeding it well, it's best if I show you. Naruto stood up as red chakra poured onto the table. It swirled around like a small hurricane. Red wisps turned into small particles as sand spun around. A small figure with a distinct large tail and 2 ears formed on the table. Naruto had seen it before. Rather than its sandy brown skin, this creature seemed slightly lighter in tone yet had the same black marking tattooing its entire body. For the lack of a better term, Naruto would describe it as a baby one-tails. Naruto, I would like you to meet Shukaku. Although, since he's only a part of it, I just call him Shu-chan. Naruto stared at the creature who was equally staring back with eyes that were like his sensei's currently. It blinked a few times before raising a tiny claw, giving him a small wave. What's up, kid? Tsunade was contemplating the merits of the young Akimika's request. There were more than a few caveats that needed to be addressed. Not that it was a difficult choice at the current time. It was just that there was a lot more underneath the surface which may work against this option should she allow it. Have you discussed this with Asuma? Koji nodded. He said if it's to help a friend I should do whatever it takes. Tsunade hummed. A small smile hiding behind her entwined hands. She glanced over to Shikamaru who caught her eye. Without saying anything he understood what she was going to ask next. As much as it's a total drag I was hoping to get an opportunity to lead different teams. I know we talked about this already but I'll take the opportunity to gain more experience. Although I hope you push your medical shinobi initiatives soon. Despite Shikamaru's typical uninterested tone, there was a lot more certainty in them following their retrieval mission. While it had been successful in Sasuke's recovery it could have ended much worse. That had also sparked another conversation about pushing for one member of each squad to have a medic. Her initial plan was to see if Sakura had the aptitude for it once Naruto had been sent to Jiraiya and she figured out what to do with the flight risk Uchiha. It seemed like a good means to get the most out of her talents. The incident a week ago set that back greatly. Tsunade didn't even know if the girl had the will anymore to carry on as a shinobi. The psyche evaluator did not have a good report. What about you, Ino? Would you be comfortable having Sakura take Shikamaru's place on Squad 10? The young blonde pursued her lips. It was hard to get a read on the girl at the moment as she was still over-emotional following the news on Sasuke's escape. You said Sasuke ATT. Hurt Sakura, Lady Tsunade? Is she alright? She's not in the best condition, mentally at least. Her continuation as a Kunoichi may be in jeopardy. Tsunade did not mince words. With almost all the cards out on the table she didn't want there to be any misconceptions on what may lay ahead. Sakura's strong. Ino affirmed. I have known her for years. She'll get through this. Does that mean you would accept the transfer? The young Yamanaka nodded. While she still looked shaky in her own resolve, it may be best for Sakura to get a sense of normalcy within a new squad. While her experience with the last Uchiha was limited, she knew Naruto most likely made their team dynamic, unique. For now then it was simply a wait-and-see strategy. Alright. I'll make the necessary changes to the squad. Shikamaru, I want you ready to head out for upcoming missions. Please keep me updated on Sakura's status during your training and missions. This arrangement will only be temporary should issues arise. Tsunade ordered. Yes, Lady Hokage. If I may ask though, how bad is the situation with Naruto? I know you glanced over it but, I know you were holding back. The Nara boy asked as he stared at her, not bothering to look at his teammates' concerned glances. Sometimes she cursed how perceptive the Nara clan was. They were the worst to gamble against. She was contemplating telling them the severity of Naruto's case but that may only make things worse. She needed them focused on other tasks. Especially when the village needed everyone they could spare. It's best to discuss this at a different time. Just be on the lookout for any signs of him while on your missions. Now dismissed. Tsunade sunk into her chair, letting out a sigh of relief as they shut the door behind them. It had been frank and probably made them more suspicious but now wasn't the time for hard truths. Her breathing slowed as her fatigue waned on her after several sleepless nights. For right now, she needed to rest. The shitstorm Naruto caused would be there when she woke up. So weird, Naruto mumbled. He had seen this beast twice already. First against his battle with Gaara. Its massive form only being subdued by an equally hulking creature like the Chief Toad. The second was when his sensei seemed to transform into the beast as well. Easily DW'ing Gaara by a large margin. Yet, here it was, only slightly bigger than Akamaru. What? Who are you calling weird? It flailed its arms around angrily, probably would have jumped Naruto if his sensei hadn't picked him up. Okay, no need to get upset Shu-chan. Let's settle down, I just wanted you to meet Naruto, it seems like you still need a nap. I'm not some infant that gets cranky. Shu-chan huffed. Yes I know. Just rest for a bit and I'll feed you later. Noriyuki placated as the small-tailed beast's chakra seemed to vanish back within its host. His sensei let out a throaty chuckle at the situation. Clearly this wasn't an odd occurrence for him. That was so weird. Naruto muttered again. When I heard the mass of chakra I had been feeding to me speak, I thought my old age had finally caught up to me. Lo and behold, I see a pint-sized tailed beast cursing me out. Ha ha ha. It was so big when you fought that octopus guy though. Yes, well, when you feed anything for 60 years it tends to grow quite significantly. And, you two get along. Naruto never really took into consideration that there were others like him who actually had command over the beasts inside them. Naruto had just scratched the surface on controlling the Nine Tails' power. It seemed that there were even stages beyond the chakra cloak he was used to. Noriyuki had a gentle smile on his face. Yeah, he is very dear to me. Then doesn't that mean your sensei was right? You were able to establish a connection with the One Tails like he had hoped someone would do. To Naruto this seemed to prove that the sacrifice his sensei made was justified. Noriyuki sighed. I never said I thought that he was wrong. Nor do I think some semblance of peace and understanding can't be formed amongst people, like Hagoromo spoke of. The issue remains that I don't agree with the methods they sought to achieve them. Case in point, while my master was ultimately correct about shukaku, I did it as a rogue shinobi and did not have to lock myself up to do so. Naruto frowned at the assessment. Technically, that had been the case. Gaara seemed to have all these issues with his tailed beast because of the harsh condition inside his village. If he had been elsewhere he may have had a better time dealing with it and may have connected to it like his sensei had. I should thank you, Naruto. Noriyuki said. Thank me. You see, I have been keeping an eye on the main host of Shukaku for years. I am aware of Gaara's condition. Part of my reason for returning to the continent was to take Shukaku from the hidden sand once and for all. The suffering that their jinchuriki went through finally wore on my patience. So I was going to extract the majority of its chakra to give the boy a semblance of peace. Naruto blinked. You were going to take Gaara's tailed beast. The thought was a strange one to comprehend. Simply removing the source of such pain like it was a splinter that had dug itself into the skin. I was, until I saw a young boy stare him down and tell him things don't have to be the way he thinks they are. That one's fate isn't determined by hatred and killing. Noriyuki gave him a knowing smile. One that made Naruto feel bashful, realizing it was him he had been talking about. It wasn't anything special. For Naruto it was something he couldn't help but empathize with Gaara about, as they had been so similar. Is this why you decided to help me? Naruto asked. Out of everything, the reason Naruto could think of this seemed to be the most likely. Nope. Naruto sagged. Or not, apparently. Ha 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 ha. Carrying on with the story then. As I have told you, this was the time I spent traveling. Earning my infamous reputation. Gaining knowledge and allies. Best times of my life if I'm being honest. Taking everything together, I don't regret my decision to not become the Kazekage or to leave my village. The people I have in my life now are those I wouldn't give up for anything. What about those you left behind in the village? Surely there were those that wanted you to stay or get you back. While Naruto had no way of confirming this, he had a sense that his sensei's departure wasn't a simple goodbye. He knew from his encounter with Sasuke that his hunch was true. I know we talked about how to handle your friends if they try to bring you back. To be honest, I primarily based it off of my own experience. Noriyuki rubbed his forehead. He let out a very tiresome groan. I had this one friend. Knew him for years. Our relationship was one of both friendship and rivalry. While the others in the village had no qualms at killing a deserter. He was adamantly different. He swore he would save me from the dark path I was on and bring me home. Naruto trembled at the parallels. It was the exact same with him and Sasuke. How he fought him tooth and nail to save him from the evil Orochimaru. He wasn't successful, was he? Noriyuki blanched. Ugh, the guy eventually got on my nerves. He became so fixated on me, even saying to save me that both he and I would die together. Nothing really creeped me out more than that. His sensei shivered, clearly disturbed by the memory. Yeah, but he was trying to help you. Naruto argued. He did it out of concern for you. To him you were family. I know, but that's not what true friendship or being family is. He didn't respect my decision. Only forced his wants on me. I was able to see past my own desires with my sensei's choice even when I would have destroyed the village to prevent it from happening. My friend never gave me the same. If he had supported me like a true friend, I may have been more receptive to avoiding more dangerous choices. In the end, he died of old age in regret that he failed. I visited his grave once after he passed as a means to let bygones be. For me, our friendship ended a long time ago. The words Noriyuki spoke made Naruto feel sick. Like everything he had done was so wrong, it may have fractured the effort he had done to get Sasuke back. Yeah, but he was. Let me ask you this, Naruto, how would you feel if your friends prevented you from becoming Hokage? Why would they? I mean, they would never dash. Oh? Being Hokage is a dangerous job. What if they felt it was safer for you to stay a regular ninja? I mean, could you blame them? They just want to protect you from a dangerous job. To keep you from dying so you can live a proper life. Noriyuki rested his fist against his cheek. His eyes seemed lifeless as he bore into Naruto's small form. He could only shrink under his sensei accusations. But I want to become Hokage to protect them. And? The outcome is the same. Whether it's dying to protect people, or to kill people, or to waste away in the hopes of a better future. People will die. Who are you to decide which dreams are worth dying for? To me, that makes you no better than the nobles in the land of lightning. I may say to live by your own rules and live a life without regret, but I would never deny that for someone else. They would be better off dead. Naruto clutched his knees. His whole body was trembling. His eyes were becoming wet again. He felt so helpless right now. His sensei's words felt so right, but at the same time they hurt him deeply. He didn't understand the pain that he felt when his friends got hurt. I don't want my friends to die. It would only fill me with regret. Naruto managed. Then don't. Help them fulfill their goals without letting them sacrifice themselves in the process. No one says you have to fully go along with their plans. You think deeply about this friend of yours. How you prevented him from what you thought to be a death sentence. If I had been in your shoes, I would have prevented him from being sacrificed but still allowed him to gain the power he sought. Let him know he wasn't in this fight alone. Naruto looked up at his sensei. Hope filling him at such an opportune outcome. How? What do you think? Noriyuki said, giving him a wolfish smile. One he had seen many times since their meeting. By becoming so strong you can make it happen. Naruto replied in realization. So strong that you can put everything in your locus of control. Noriyuki clapped. It seemed his answer was the one he had hoped Naruto would reach. Bravo, Naruto. You have the answer it took me decades to reach. There is a fine line between freedom and control. Only by becoming strong can you bend and twist it to your liking. I have no doubt you will surpass the fourth Hokage sooner than you think. Your great-grandson. Naruto mentioned. A little hard to believe. Noriyuki poured another glass of kirameku. He held up the glass, staring at the liquid. I know. The boy was the spitting image of my granddaughter. Minus the hair, he was her spitting image. Ha. When I saw him I thought he was a she. Damn pretty boy. Naruto knew his sensei didn't like men who were overly pretty. Something about them not having to put in too much effort. The only real encounter with one was Haku, but that made him feel more confused than anything else. Something he would rather avoid talking about. I don't understand. How often did you go see him? Twice. Once when he was just born and a second time after he became Hokage. Why only twice? Naruto felt slightly irked at that fact. If he was related to the fourth Hokage, then he would probably visit the guy every day. Noriyuki shrugged. Most don't get to even meet their grandparents because of the short life expectancy. Let alone a great-grandparent. Not like he needed anything from me when he was the leader of an entire village. Yeah, but didn't he know who you were? Noriyuki shook his head. Never told him. It wouldn't have changed anything. He wasn't the type of man to let something like that interfere with his duty. Naruto was completely lost now. His duty. Smiling at his confusion, Noriyuki let out a loud laugh that echoed throughout the room. Naruto could feel his chair vibrate because of it. Of course. It is the Hokage's job to protect the village from thieves after all. Groaning and burying his face into his palm, Naruto couldn't help but cringe. Of course you were. He was quite skilled. I had thought I had snuck in without being detected, but he found me. He was certainly a quick one. His sensei nodded. That was when you two fought. Was the battle intense? Naruto leaned in, his interest in this was picking up. His sensei was shaking, barely containing his own laughter. Well, he lasted a minute longer than the Hokage did. Ha 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 ha. This wasn't a surprising fact. Not anymore anyway. Naruto had seen just how powerful his sensei was. The fourth Hokage must have been a strong shinobi, stronger than anyone in the village, but it seemed that even a legend can't defeat a force of nature. That was what Noriyuki was, at least to Naruto. Someone who you couldn't negotiate with as, in his own words, didn't need to compromise. If he wanted something, he took it. A bit disparaging to know that even as the Hokage he wouldn't have been able to match his sensei without the training and insight he had been given. Something he wasn't sure how the old man or Granny Tsunade would deal with. Not well, he figured. What was it you were trying to steal from the Leaf Village, sensei? I felt a presence in the village I had thought was long gone. I went there to look for it. Something that shouldn't have been there. It turned out to be in vain though. But I did encounter someone you might be interested in. Huh? Who would that be? It was you. Naruto frowned, face scrunching in thought. You met me. You see, this isn't the first time you and I have met. In fact, I met you 13 years ago when I infiltrated the village and fought the fourth Hokage. Noriyuki reached into his breast pocket, pulling out a photograph. He slid it over towards Naruto, who was trying to make sense of the timing. 13 years ago? I'm still a few months away from turning 13 myself. He mumbled as he picked up the photo. It was a woman sitting next to Noriyuki. His eyes widened marginally as there was a man leaning in between them behind a stand who he recognized. It was Teiuchi. This is Ichiraku ramen. Naruto exclaimed. I told you I always try local ramen when I visit a new town. But that isn't what I wanted you to see. It's the woman in the photo who's important. Naruto scanned more closely at her. She had very distinctive and pretty red hair that extended down her back. She also wore a green dress over a white shirt. But these were all secondary to him. For some reason her purple eyes seemed to draw him in. Something that he couldn't explain made him feel drawn to them. Look at her stomach. His sensei spoke. Looking down, he could see her stomach was more unnaturally rounded. She looked like she was sitting uncomfortably on her stool. Although you couldn't tell as she was smiling next to her sensei. Both giving peace signs to the camera. His heart pounded. Hands were trembling. He was struggling for breath. I don't understand. Please. Please tell me. Naruto rasped out. Well, you see, you were still in your mother's belly when this photo was taken. You were about 9 months along at that point. When a female jinchuriki is pregnant, they take 10 months to fully develop. Naruto collapsed to the floor. This conversation had taken its toll on him. What strength he had in him seemed to seep away. He nearly hit his head until Noriyuki caught him. Right now though, he was trying to dissect the impact of this information. Questions forming like drops of rain. Naruto? Are you okay? Why yeah. I don't know, what to, how to. Noriyuki let out a soft gasp of relief. I can feel your curiosity and concern. Just listen to my words. Your mother was the jinchuriki before you. She had come from the land of whirlpools. More specifically from the Hidden Eddy village. Before its destruction in the Second Shinobi War, it was the home of the Uzumaki clan, whom she was a part of. The Hidden Eddy village and the Hidden Leaf were close allies. Because of this, your mother was sent to be the vessel of the nine-tailed fox. Naruto gripped his sensei's jacket. He could barely contain his frustration. Why? Why her? Why did it have to be her? Her seal, unlike yours, was only meant to contain the beast. Her chakra was naturally strong and dense, which provided extra power to contain it. Like you, she had a strong determination and will beyond hers and everyone else's true understanding. Noriyuki spoke calmingly. He moved Naruto's head to stroke his hair. It helped to soothe Naruto's heart. And the Uzumaki clan. Scattered across the globe. Many possess red hair and powerful chakra. Although other clans from that village like the Uzuki and Uzuma are also part of the village as well. His sensei explained. Oh. What was her name? My mother, I mean. It was Kushina. Kushina Uzumaki. She was so excited to be having you in her life. All she talked about was how happy she was. Granted, she also seemed terrified because she heard giving birth was painful. Ha ha ha. She was like you and your fear of ghosts. Naruto lay there, resting against his sensei. The aching feeling pulled on him as a thought crossed his mind. His sensei had been all over the world. Admitted to falling in love with multiple women. Having a lot of children as a result. Of all the reasons he would help him from being imprisoned. His heart panged with hope his hunch was right. More so than he had hoped for anything. The problem was that he could barely bring himself to ask. If it was true, then how could Noriyuki let him go off on his own? Why would he? Perhaps there was another reason besides hindering his growth? Maybe there was a hidden danger that prevented him? He needed to know. Otherwise it would hurt too much. Sensei, could you be, are you my? It was more difficult than Naruto could muster up to do. The words struggled out with his choked words. I'm sorry, but I'm not. Naruto's heart fell. He never felt this hurt before in his entire life. Worse yet, it was his own fault for coming to that conclusion. I am such a fool, Naruto thought, begrudging his own naivete. But like everything else, he couldn't let this get to him. He needed to smile and get on with it. He. Sorry, sensei. That was pretty stupid of me to dash. Naruto never finished as his sensei wrapped his arms around him. So tightly he could hear his sensei heartbeat. Never apologize for that, Naruto. He flinched at how strained his sensei spoke. Like he was also holding back his sadness. Had I known what was going to happen. With the 9 tails being released, I would have stuck around and prevented it. As a result, you lost more than many could bear with. Yet you have an inner strength that surpasses all others. How lucky I would be to have a son like you. Like a dam, Naruto couldn't contain those intense emotions any longer. The pain. The agony. The sadness. All rushing out of him. All he could do was cling to the lifeline his sensei was giving him. How he wouldn't be here anymore in an hour. They sat embraced for a few minutes before Naruto leaned back. Another burning question, as it seemed now was the best chance to find out. Sensei, you know who my father is then? Of course, who do you think was holding the camera? His sensei smirked slightly before falling into a frown. However, I won't tell you who he is. What? Why? He asked, stunned at the terse reply. He had been upfront about everything so far. So why would he not tell him this? Noriyuki grabbed Naruto by his shoulders, squeezing them tightly. Listen, Naruto, I know this will sound frustrating, but telling you who he is would only be a detriment. I don't know the reason the Hokage never told you. However, the reason I won't tell you now is because of your internal conflict. Internal conflict? Noriyuki squeezed tighter. Almost to the point where it hurt. A very concerned look plastered Noriyuki's face. I can feel you are still uncertain about your path. Your father was very important to the Leaf Village. If I tell you now, you may feel obligated to return to the Leaf Village. I don't want you to feel any obligation towards your father or towards me. I want you to make your own choices. Promise me, Naruto. Naruto nodded. I promise, but I really wish to know who he is. Noriyuki took a deep breath. Humming in thought to himself. Okay, let's make a compromise. He lifted Naruto off him before standing up. Noriyuki walked over to one of his shelves, taking a wooden box. He opened it up, placing it on the table. Inside were 3 straps. 2 of which contained a weird-looking kunai. Instead of a single prong there were 3. On the hilt was a wooden grip with some writing down the length of it. They looked really cool to Naruto, who had always wanted a unique weapon to use. Although the air cannon still seemed much more appealing to him. These kunai belonged to your father. I had 3 of them, so I will allow you to have one. Think of it as a clue towards your father's identity. Naruto gingerly lifted one up to examine it. It seemed like a regular kunai besides its appearance. Dad used these? What's up with the writing? It's a seal that he used in battle. Nothing you won't be able to defeat should you continue your training. Looking at the case again, Naruto could see 1 kunai left. His limited math skills went off as the number was wrong. You said you had 3? I only see 2 here. Ha ha ha. I left one at the beach where we came out of the ruins at Hozuki Castle. Why? It seemed strange to just leave a memento like that at some random spot. His sensei gave an ear-to-ear grin. A spark of madness flickering his golden eyes. Just a means to mess with some people. You'll get the joke eventually. Anyway, feel free to take the kunai and keep the photo. They are rightfully yours. Naruto nodded. He picked up the photo and placed it in his pocket. A small smile forming on his face. Thanks, sensei, for everything. His sensei looked at the clock. It was almost. Well, there is one last thing we have to do, Naruto, before you go. Plus there are some items I wish to give you before you leave on your travels. It will be best if we go to the top deck again. Kakashi was exhausted. He had been living off of food pills and canteen water for over 3 weeks. He remembered why being in Umbu was a young man's game. Not that he would admit he was old. Just out of shape since those days. Something he had been trying to get back into. Although he wished physical exercise was something he wished would solve his issue back home. The news Sasuke escaped again, injuring Sakura in the process, cut him deeply. With Naruto still missing, it was hard not to feel like his team was falling apart like a house of cards. Kakashi, I'm back. Pakin spoke as he jumped onto the branch next to him. Let me guess. You found nothing. The pug nodded. He and the rest of his pack were also running on fumes. Even with him and the tracker ninja, there was no sign of his student. They didn't even have a means to let Lord Jiraiya know, as he left for some important task the day before Sasuke left for the first time. He most likely wouldn't be happy to return to find his new apprentice missing. All right, Kakashi sighed, go and give my report. Tell her I'll return home now. Roger. Oh, and Kakashi. Don't worry about the kid. No matter where he is, he'll handle himself. He's tough. Pakin said, trying to placate his worries. He managed a small smile. I know. The dog was summoned away as he was left on his own. Worry was on the forefront of his mind. In the back of it was the same mystery that confounded him since he infiltrated the prison only to find his student gone. For the 100th time since finding it buried in the sand on the beach across the river from the castle, he contemplated the implications of the kunai in his hand. The one so famously used by his sensei. Of all the ways to escape an equally famous inescapable prison, especially by a naive genin, this seemed to be a clear answer. To his knowledge, his sensei never came out this way in the land of mushrooms. Something he would need to check on when he returned. Regardless of if he did or not, the significance of the possibility that the legendary flying raijin being used by anyone was staggering. But it would make sense if someone who knew it would come to retrieve Naruto. The connection between the kunai and Naruto's legacy is undeniable. With both the good and bad it came with. It seemed like Noriyuki's friends had moved the party inside the ship. No one was left on top of the deck. Scanning the horizon, Naruto could make out land in the distance. The familiar port of Nagaya dotted it. In less than an hour he would disembark. Alright, this Naruto will be our final lesson. Come kneel in front of me. Noriyuki ordered. Naruto sat in Seiza across from his sensei, who formed a summoning seal between them. From it appeared a large wooden box which he set off to the side. From another he summoned 2 bowls of instant ramen with a kin of water. Noriyuki took both and using his decompression technique began to heat up the contents before handing one to him. Quirking an eyebrow, the confused boy questioned his teacher. Not that I'm complaining, but why are we eating ramen, sensei? You and I are going to share our answers. Share our answers. You now know my history. The struggles I have been through and the losses I have suffered. They were all to give context to my answer. How I came about it and made it the core of my spirit's strength. Noriyuki explained. Naruto nodded. He had seen his sensei do his own meditation before. Like his ramen eating, he attached gratitude to the meditation. Something he learned helped fight the nine tails' negative emotions from taking over him. Now it seemed he would learn how he managed to overcome the one tails. What must I do? Merely go through everything you have done before. Focus everything on gratitude and I shall do the rest. Waiting for no prompt, Naruto closed his eyes. His hands clapped together. Itadaka Meisua, he breathed out. His sensei also copied his actions. The darkness quickly turned into Ichiraku ramen as the image in his head formed the structure. The sight, the smell, the taste, yet this time it seemed different. So this is your answer, huh? Not bad, Naruto. It's been 13 years since I last sat there. Naruto flinched as he turned to see his sensei sitting in the stool next to him. He turned a little more past the entrance flaps to see nothing but darkness. It was like the ramen stand was the only thing that existed with them there. Unlike before, this seemed more real. Like he was actually at Ichiraku ramen. How is this possible? Ninshu. You are sharing your answer by connecting your emotions with this place. I got to say this ramen is the best I have had because of it. Noriyuki said, slurping down on the noodles. You should eat too. Nodding, Naruto continued with the motions. Finishing the last of the bowl before clapping his hands together again. Gakusazama deshita. He slowly opened his eyes to see his sensei still kneeling in front of him. Both their bowls of ramen were empty. It was a little surreal to go through such an experience. Like some form of teleportation. He couldn't even begin to describe how it worked. Good, now stand up. It's now my turn. Just close your eyes and copy the movements I did during my session. Naruto vaguely recalled the movements but knew that really wasn't the point. He took several steps back as it required a lot of room. His eyes closed and he began to go through the physical motions. Like his own answer, he found his eyes opened to somewhere else. Some place he had never been before. Stretched out before him was an open grass plain. It seemed to be carrying on for miles in all directions. The sky was a very deep blue and the air had this fulfilled feeling like it was made of soup broth. Gusts of wind rushed and howled, splaying the few trees that dotted the landscape. Every direction completely unknown to him and with infinite possibilities. Where are we, sensei? The boy turned to his sensei who was stretching. A place I went to right after my freedom was given to me. For a long time I was trapped in a cage without being able to even extend my full body. Being here truly felt like I was finally free of my past. The joy of freedom made me feel weightless. Naruto couldn't help but agree. The weight he had been feeling seemed to disappear. It was similar with his gratitude, but this felt much stronger. A testament to his sensei spirit, he figured. He too began to stretch his body, spinning around as his arms extended beyond their typical motion. It was a great feeling. Something he now understood to be truly extraordinary. For a long time he felt so much weighing down on him. His promise to be Hokage and to help his friends. He knew they were still there, but at the same time he felt like they had no hold over him. That he could move at his own pace and in any direction. This freedom to be anything he wanted or to go anywhere was intoxicating. For the first time in his life he realized the true feeling of freedom. Open your eyes now, Naruto. His sensei spoke through his own emotional reveling. He opened his eyes again. The world seemed different to him. Brighter. His body seemed like it was still weightless. Like he would suddenly fly away even with the resistance seals weighing down his movements. How do you feel? Naruto beamed. Unfettered. He truly did feel better. The emotional strain of their conversation washed away like a bad stain. Even realizing they were descending to the ocean didn't affect him like he thought it would. Good. With this prompt but insightful lesson I have taught you everything you need. Leaving only my farewell gifts that I need to give you. His sensei took the wooden box and pulled out several items. There were several books and a single knife. He started by handing Naruto the thickest book amongst them. I know you probably won't like this, but it will help you if you manage to get through it. It's a book on weather patterns. Naruto blanched, sticking out his tongue. Especially after such an amazing experience. Really? A textbook? Lame. Ha ha ha. I know, but what many fail to realize is that elemental jutsu can be augmented by the natural weather. Understanding it will give you an advantage during battle. Noriyuki explained. So try and get through it, will you? Ugh, fine. Good. The second book is a novel. Naruto looked at the title, The Lord of Thieves. He read aloud. His sensei traced his fingers on the cover. It's a book I wrote ages ago. It is loosely based on my life. You wrote this? Naruto looked at the book much differently now. Being given such a thing made it more valuable than any other book out there to the boy. I hope you will read should you ever feel lost. It's the first copy and priceless to me, so don't lose it. I'll treasure it. I swear it. The boy swore. Glad to hear it. Now for the last one. This is a little tricky to explain. Here, open it. His sensei handed him the black-covered book. He flipped through it to see it was a journal. This book contains 3 sections. If you flip to the first, Noriyuki moved the page to the book's start, you'll find 5 pages. Each page has 100 names on it. Naruto traced these as well. 2 caught his eye, Gato, Orochimaru. You could say these are rivals you will encounter. Men and women who care too much about power and wealth and too little about morals and people. Bad guys, Naruto summed up. Indeed. They range in strength depending on the page. However, should you manage to take them off the list by whatever means you deem necessary, I can say without a doubt you have reached a level beyond the Kage. Naruto frowned, pointing to Gato's name. But I know that Gato is dead, so why is his name still here? The name can also reference an organization as well. Just because the man is dead, doesn't mean his company isn't pulling the same crap it has done in the past. It will be up to you to find information on each of them. Naruto understood. This was meant as a guide to help him. He didn't know what happened after Gato was killed. He vaguely knew the Land of Waves was doing better, but Gato also shipped goods to other countries. His company probably had others who took over for him. The fact that a snake like Orochimaru was listed as well only painted a clear picture as to what kind of scum was listed on these pages. If he would be considered a criminal for taking these guys down, then he would be happy to do it. The second part is every rule I have told you and some which I never got to explain. Lo and behold, his sensei did indeed write down all the criminal rules he had to follow. Each written out in the order he had described them in. This seemed a little incredulous to the boy. He was actually serious about them. Damn, I thought he made them up. You just thought something rude, didn't you, Naruto? Noriyuki accused, squinting his eyes at the now nervous boy. He. I don't know what you're talking about. So tell me, what's the third section? Ha. Well, it's a map. Noriyuki spread the 2-paged map out between the bindings. He pointed to a section in the northern Land of Wind. There was a small X mark in red placed on it. On the side were simple directions describing landmarks. Back when I first started my roguish life here on this continent, I made several safe houses. This mark is the location of one of them, which I am bestowing to you. Really? What's inside it? Training materials, loot I left behind, and other things you will find useful. Everything in the base and anything connected to it are now yours. Call it my gift to you for these last 3 weeks. I would make it your first stop before anything else. His sensei then took the knife and placed it down on the deck. This dagger is magnetic, he spoke as it wobbled 180 degrees in the other direction. The blade will always point north and will serve as an unlocking key for the seal to gain entry to the hideout. Don't lose it. Naruto took the blade, immediately feeling how off balance it was. Clearly it wasn't meant for combat. It looked exactly like his sensei's jukin blades. He stowed it in his inner pocket. Oh, and here, take this as well. Out of the box his sensei lifted a single strpped, black leathered travel bag. Inside contains money, some non-perishable food and extra clothes for you. Everything you need to get to the hideout. Naruto took the bag silently, tucking the strap over his shoulder. While he was grateful for all this, he felt annoyed at this sensei. His eyebrow twitched. He even growled at his sensei, annoyed. What's wrong, Naruto? Why? Why what? His sensei replied innocently. Why the hell did you wait till the last minute to give me the book? Do you know how panicked I was for the last 3 weeks about being thrown out into the world without a single clue as to where I should go? Naruto started wailing on his sensei, who laughed at his complaints. Something only amused him more. You did it on purpose, didn't you, you know? What? Me? Yes. You. You shameless bastard. Ha 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 ha. I forgot. Whoops. Naruto was shaking his sensei angrily. All those worries he put up with just because his sensei wanted to mess with him before he left. Naruto changed his mind. He wouldn't miss this idiot. I'm happy to see you in good spirits, young man. Both turned to see Sasuke approach them. We will be touching down in 5 minutes. I suppose you planned to have him walk the rest of the way to Nagoya. The old Sarutobi said to his sensei. Yeah. Best to stay hidden. It will only be a half an hour run across the ocean. Noriyuki confirmed. Well then, before you leave, young man, could I ask you a favor? Naruto let go of his sensei. Turning to address the man. Sure. I guess. Sasuke pulled out a small metal rod from behind him. It was gold in color with the 2 bulbous ends. He placed it in Naruto's hands. Please, if you ever see my son, would you give this to him? I had taken it from him when he was younger as a punishment and never got the chance to return it. This is old man thirds? Guess I forgot he used bow staff. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Naruto placed the metal rod in his bag. The man gave him a small bow. You have my thanks. I wish you well on your travels. Just as he finished, Naruto felt the ship jerk. A large splash rushing as they touched down into the ocean. I'll see him off, Sasuke. Tell the others to be ready to head back to home base. Have Toshiko have the engines ready to go at full speed. Noriyuki instructed. Sasuke nodded before heading back. His sensei turned, not meeting Naruto's eye. Come Naruto, it's time. Naruto followed his sensei. Both jumped down to the water below. This was it. Their last moments together. Perhaps for the last time. They stood together for several moments in silence. Neither saying a word. As much as Naruto wanted to beg his sensei to let him stay, he knew he just couldn't. Especially knowing the answer would be a painful no. It would only make this harder on both of them. Something he wouldn't do for both their sakes. Naruto, Noriyuki said softly, almost a whisper. I have something to tell you, and I know it won't make sense right now. A gust of wind blew heavily on them. The words his sensei spoke to him left his body rigid. Words he had never heard anyone say to him before. Almost unnatural to hear. He felt his sensei's arms wrap around him. So tightly it felt they were fused together. Naruto couldn't get his bearings to return the embrace. He stood unmoving a single inch. Watching on as his sensei turned around. His tall figure looming over him even as he walked back up the ship's side. Before he realized it, the ship began to rise once more towards the sky. Its shadow cast over him. Quickly moving away. Naruto. Jolting from his frozen stupor, he stared up to his sensei. The sun casting over him. His sensei's smile managing to ignite his soul. Promise me. No matter what happens. You'll make every day fun. Wordlessly he raised his fist in the air. A silent acknowledgement of his words. As the ship disappeared above the clouds, Naruto turned towards land. His sensei was gone. He was on his own. All alone. The tears he had pushed back came out. He fell to his knees. The cold water soaking his suit pants. He felt regret for not saying goodbye. It had been too hard for him though. His body felt numb, but he knew Noriyuki's absence already left a stain on his heart. Canonical Omake. Hirate's fury. The ancient swordsman's eye shot open. His whole body jumped up from his unconscious state. It only took him a moment to understand what had happened. His foolish master had knocked him out, using his ninja to hide his presence. Something he had, though he was skilled enough to notice. Sword at his side, he bolted up the ship's steps, making his way to the top deck where his master lay, staring up at the sky. He turned on his side, giving him his usual smug smile. "Oh, Hirate-kun. You're awake," he chirped obnoxiously. He gripped his sword, anger protruding from his very spirit. "Where is the boy?" "Gone. Left an hour ago." "Why do you ask? What did you tell him?" "You'll have to be more specific." "I told him a lot of things. Ninshu, his clan, the location of one of the hideouts." Hirate drew his sword, only managing a step before his master drew his air cannon. Sparks flew between them as their chakras collided. The ship's hull creaked from the strain. The others most likely knew this was going to happen and opted to stay below deck as to not interfere. "Where are you going, Hirate-kun?" "We're celebrating tonight." "I'm going to kill the boy," he snarled. His words got a more intense reaction from his master. "My great-great-grandson, you mean?" The foolish man stood up to face him. His eyes turned to that of his tailed beast. He even went so far as to put on his sunglasses, the black rings around his eyes forming and the black circle poking out from his hat. He could only do the same, using his own sage mode and calling upon the cool air to be his ally. Of all the things he let slide by him, he wouldn't let this go. "Move aside, boss. I won't give you another warning." "You fear him that much?" "Your attempts to hide his progress didn't elude me." He had grown significantly in such a short time. His growth will threaten the world. His master shrugged. "Maybe, but he's the type who only learns quickly when someone is there to guide him. I'm sure his growth will slow now that he's on his own." "Irrelevant. Even with only a fraction of his true limit, he could prove to be dangerous." "Ha ha ha. That's what I'm hoping. This continent has been too stagnant over the past few decades. I think it's time to let a wild animal run loose and see what happens." Hirate was not amused. "Your whims may have put everything in jeopardy. He is an Uzumaki, the cursed clan." "True, but he doesn't know that. Besides, I never told him that you were the real reason the Uzumaki's barrier was destroyed. Not that he may have cared, as he has never met them." His master pulled out his second air cannon, blades aglow with white chakra. "The question you need to ask yourself right now is whether you can fulfill the promise I made to you after all this time." Hirate grit his teeth, slowly sheathing his blade. Wordlessly he returned below deck, knowing now wasn't the time to strike. He could hear his master laughing at him, like he normally did when he backed down. He heard his master speak aloud right before he shut the hatch behind him. "Ha ha ha. Naruto Uzumaki, what a monster I've unleashed." That's it for part 6. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.